Hello, friends. I'm Chris. I'm with Transformation Nation Yoga and Wellness. Thank you for joining us tonight for our Science of Stretching Hamstring Freedom sequence. Now, for props, I think it would be most comfortable if you had a yoga mat. If you don't have a yoga mat, if you have a comfortable carpeted area of your home where you could practice, I think that will also work well. 2 yoga blocks. If you don't have yoga blocks, you could use maybe a stack of paperback books if you've got something that won't slip and slide, or even like 1 or 2 really firm, like a metal water bottle, something that will support your weight and give you lots of support. You're going to need a strap. If you don't have a yoga strap, that's okay. A nylon belt, you could use a leather belt, anything that's going to give you some resistance and that you can close up into a loop. You may choose to use a blanket, and I know this is a prop that you have in your home. I don't have anything specific in mind for the blanket tonight, but I can think of 1 or 2 places where for some people, this would be the very thing. You'll need a bolster. If you don't have a yoga bolster, a couple of pillows from your bed, or one of those body pillows, or better yet, like a couch cushion, something that's got a little bit of firmness. And the last prop for tonight, you're going to need either a stool or a chair, like a kitchen chair, something that doesn't have arms along the seat. And with that, we're going to get started with our hamstring freedom sequence in just a moment. All right, let me have you get started in a seated position. So I'm going to place the support of a bolster under my seat so my pelvis continues to roll forward. And then we're not going to be here a super long time, but I'd like you to set up as if we were. So set up really solid posture. Float your head over your shoulders, over your hips. Find length along your spinal column. And let's start with a cleansing breath. Draw a nice, deep, life-affirming inhale. And then open your mouth, let that all go. Good. And now we're going to start right away with the breath work that I'm going to ask you to continue through the practice. And it's a 4-8 breath. So it'll be a 4 count inhale through your nose and an 8 count exhale through your mouth, making a ha sound. The ha doesn't have to be audible, or it can be. Either way is okay. But it's that sensation of the ha. So exhale out all your breath. Inhale through your nose for 1, 2, 3, 4. Exhale through the mouth. 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Inhale. 1, 2, 3, 4. Exhale. 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Inhale. Exhale. Inhale. Exhale. Right, and the goal is we'll continue this breath pattern throughout the practice. My experience with this practice as a practitioner is you will probably lose the breath at some point. That's okay. That's really like to be expected. That happens to me every practice. Part of my responsibility to you is to continue to cue you toward the breath. And I'll talk you through why we're doing that later. So make your way up into a standing position, maybe at the top edge of your mat. Have your chair or your stool and a block and a bolster all close by. Now I'm going to turn to the side just for demonstration purposes. But in your next inhale, start floating your fingers up toward the stars. Turn the palms of your hands out. Lift your gaze. Draw your shoulder blades together. Not like you were pinching a broomstick, but a slight action of drawing the shoulder blades together. And then as you exhale, start to cross the arms in front of you. Sit back into a squat. Now, one option, the squat could be on a chair or a stool. And for some bodies, this is going to be plenty of squat. So that's one option. A second option is to squat with 1 or more blocks under the seat. So that's an option. Regardless, release the fingers down toward the earth. Release your forehead down to the earth. Now, a third option, the one I'm going to go with tonight, is place some support under your heels. So this could be a folded blanket. It could be a bolster. Or you could do this squat with no support under your heels. All right, on an inhale, press down into your feet. Rise up, float your arms up over your head. Turn your palms to the outside. Lift your gaze, open your heart. Exhale, cross your forearms in front of you. Sit down into any version of your squat. Release your forehead to your forearms. Inhale, press into your feet. Come all the way up to standing. Open your heart. Exhale, cross the forearms. Sit into a squat. Release your forehead to your forearms. And then one more time on this set. Press down into your feet. Lift all the way up. Open your heart. And then we'll sit back into a squat. This time we'll stay a while. So you can start with your forehead released to your forearms, and then start to drape your fingers down toward the earth. Release your forehead down toward the earth. Right, one of the principles of this flexibility training practice, this gravity yoga practice, is called wet noodle. And this is based on the science that muscles stretch best when they're relaxed. So most of the shapes that we take tonight, there'll be certain areas where you have to engage muscles in order to maintain the position. But then everything outside of that, there's lots of opportunities to release and relax that. So this is called wet noodle. It's one of three principles. On your next inhale, start pressing into your feet. Lift up, open your heart up to the moon. These are called moon squats. Exhale, cross your forearms in front of you. Sit into a squat, release your forehead to your forearms. Inhale, lift up. Arms open out, heart opens up. Exhale, sit down into your squat. Inhale, lift up. Exhale, sit down into a squat. And once again, we're going to stay a little bit longer this time. So you can drape both your forehead and your fingers down toward the earth. So we're just using this series to warm the body a little bit. And for the most part, the rest of the poses that we do tonight are going to be very much static in nature. You can start pressing into your heels. Lift yourself up. This time come into a forward fold. Heel toe your feet out about hip distance apart. Make a number 11 shape with the outside of your feet. Drape your forehead down to the earth. You could let your fingers dangle down toward the earth. Now, if that's way too much compression in the lower back, you can bring your hands to your forearms to your chair or to your stool. But shift the weight forward into the balls of your feet and relax your neck. Right, so having that chair or the stool is option one. Option two, blocks under your hands at the highest height. Right, if that's too much, if that just doesn't feel good for the back, bring your sits bones up against the wall. And then you can either release your fingers down toward the earth, or here again, you can place your hands on blocks. And then you can always just take a forward fold without the support of a wall, a stool, or the blocks. And these are not value laden. I don't have a preference. I want you to choose the shape that best fits your body, but leave enough of a bend in your knees that your belly rests on your thighs. And come back to that 4-8 breath, a 4 count inhale through the nose. And an 8 count exhale through the mouth, making a ha sound. So I mentioned before we started, this practice on the surface, it looks a bit like yin. Right? But one of the differences is the scale of sensation. So in yin, on a continuum from 0 to 10, I ask, let's say we take a shape that gives us at least a 4, no more than a 6. In here in this gravity yoga practice, the methodology is high level of sensation. So on that same scale from 0 to 10, we're looking at for at least a 7, right? Which often puts us into a fight or flight nervous system response. So it stimulates the central nervous system. So to counter that, because muscles don't stretch well when we're in fight or flight, to counter that, we use this breath, this 4-8 central nervous system down regulating breath. And that relatively short inhale through the nose, followed by a relatively long exhale through the mouth, tones the vagus nerve, stimulates a parasympathetic nervous system response. This is just a way that we're communicating to the body that whatever we're feeling, whatever our visceral emotional response may be to this practice, we are safe. Right? But to honor that, we want to make sure if we're getting like muscle pain or broad pain, like a whole general area, that's probably fine. But if it's specific and focused and you can point to it in one finger and it's in a joint, back out of the pose a little bit. That's not where we want to maintain that sensation. Relax your neck a little bit. Right, so that 4-8 breath down regulates the central nervous system. It communicates to the body that we're safe, allowing the muscles to better stretch. It also helps us to stay calm. Now, here's one other side effect of this breath. And this is one of the reasons why science of stretching classes are so nice in the evening. It tends to make us really sleepy. So the practice itself, it's a pretty rigorous practice, right? This is a practice that challenges and sometimes even triggers people. But it also calms the nervous system. So people often report being really sleepy after a science of stretching class. So the thing with this 4-8 breath is you can do the breath even if you're not doing the practice. So this would also be a great breath if you woke up in the middle of the night and had trouble getting back to sleep. 4-count inhale through your nose, followed by an 8-count exhale through the mouth. Start you to walk your hands forward. Make your way into a high plank, a high push-up position. So we're using this as a reset pose. So there's really not a reason you couldn't also do this on the knees. All right, but press through the heels toward the back edge of your mat. Draw your belly button towards your spine. Ground your index, knuckle, and thumb firmly down into the earth. Make the back of your head buoyant rather than letting the forehead drape down toward the earth. So the back of the head roughly in line with the back of the heart. And then tap your knees down to the earth. Sit back into child's pose just for one breath, and then rock forward into a high plank. So really engage high plank. So all those cues I gave before, look for those here too. Tap your knees down to the earth. Sit back into child's pose. Knees out wide. Big toes come to touch. Press the shoelace parts of your feet. Lower your seat down towards your heels. And then once you've set into the pose, right away lift back up. Come onto your seat. Lengthen your right leg forward. I'm going to choose to place a bolster under my seat, and I recommend having 2 blocks in your chair close by. Bring your left heel into your groin, all the way into your groin. Toes on your left foot reach up for the earth, reach up for the stars rather. On an inhale, lift your fingers up, open your heart, and then start walking your hands forward. Start to fold forward over that right thigh. Now, once you've reached the maximum level of stretch here, you could release your forehead down to blocks. So to do this, I'm going to have one block at the medium height, one block at the highest height on my thigh. Right? I don't have enough space to reach my forehead further forward than that. You could also do this with your head floating over your shoulders, over your hips. Or if the back, this doesn't feel good on the back, you could also place your stool over that thigh and just place the hands or the forearms on your stool. So lots of support for the lower back, and you still get a bit of a forward fold here. So they're all just options. And we're 15 minutes into our sequence, which I told you was a happy back sequence. And I just realized we're not doing the happy back sequence at all. We're doing the hamstring freedom sequence. You're probably feeling that right now. So great question. Where should you be feeling this? I don't know where we should be feeling this, where you may be feeling this. It could be on the hamstring, the 3+1 set of muscles that runs from the sits bones down to the back of the knee. Could be on the calf or the back of the leg. You could be feeling this. We've got a little bit of lateral hip rotation in that left hip. You could be feeling it there, even in the deep 6 lateral hip rotators. So the hamstrings are an interesting set of muscles. It's a set of 4 muscles. 3 of them start at the sits bones and come down toward the back of the knee. And the 4th one starts midstream down. So it's really 3+1 muscles. The total is really 4. And they're tricky. They're chronically tight for lots of people from movement patterns. Part of it's from sitting a lot. But part of it, depending on the movement, like there's a big cultural obsession with movement arts in our society on running. I'm a runner myself. I love it. And it's great for our hearts, but it really is hardening for the hamstrings. So sometimes even very fit people can have really tight, really limited range of movement in the hamstrings. And if the hamstrings are tight, chances are that's going to express also in the hips and in the lower back. Come back to the 4-8 breath. Inhale through your nose for 1, 2, 3, 4. Exhale 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Inhale 1, 2, 3, 4. Exhale 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Inhale 1, 2, 3, 4. Exhale 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. One more round of breath. Inhale. Exhale. So to lift yourself up, then maybe take your hand to the outside of your left thigh. Just lift that knee up so the knee's pointing up toward the stars. Toes on your left foot point forward. Bring your right hand under your right shoulder with the fingers pointing forward, and then start pressing into the sole of that left foot. Come up into a wild thing. We won't stay long. This is just a reset. And then lower your seat back down to your mat. And then right away, straighten your left leg forward. Slide your right heel all the way in towards your groin. Option to use a chair or a stool. Option to have a couple of blocks. But on an inhale, lengthen along the spinal column first. Exhale, start to crawl your hands forward, fold forward over that left thigh. So I'm going to find a way to stack those blocks on my thighs. For many bodies, there's enough range of motion here that people can easily stack blocks on the floor and bring the forehead down. It's just not available to me. Either way is really okay. But this support, Lucas Rockwood, the founder of the system, he calls this blockhead. But really, for me, this is as comfortable as I can make what's not a very comfortable pose at all for me. Right, so we talked about the principle of wet noodles. Speaking of which, check in, notice anywhere where you're holding on and gripping muscular engagement where you can let go. That's all going to be counterproductive. Any muscular engagement outside of our target area, sometimes even in our target area, is going to be a bit counterproductive. And that 4-8 down regulating breath can help with that too. So we talked about the wet noodle principle. We talked about the down regulating 4-8 breath principle. The third principle of gravity yoga is called time under passive tension. And according to this principle, in order for us to make gains in our flexibility, we have to meet or exceed our hold times. And it's what I found is it's really important to use an actual timer, like a stopwatch timer. I had a morning and evening stretching routine for years where I didn't use a timer, but I watched TV and I counted. So I kept track in my head. And I thought I was super accurate. And then I got a stopwatch. I buy them now, two for $6 through Amazon, right? So really minimal investment. And I started syncing up the counting that I was doing with the timer, and I could not have been further off. It was not accurate at all. Right, so the catch with that meet or exceed hold times, the limit seems to be 5 minutes. And this, what the science shows is beyond 5 minutes in a single incident, a stretching incident, doesn't seem to make a really meaningful difference in improving flexibility. So this is a practice, just through the nature of the practice, it tends for many people, especially the first few times, the practice feels really grueling. But I think it's important to note we don't, like, this is not a practice we have to do every day to see effectiveness. In fact, I would argue that with this particular practice, even a single incident, you'll notice some small differences. But this is one where I feel like this practice 2 or 3 times a week, in tandem with taking 2 or 3 stretches targeted to the area you worked on in a class and doing those every evening, is one, a nice way to set yourself up for a relaxing night of sleep with that down regulating breath. But two, those 15-minute bursts. So usually 5 minutes per side on a pose that's pretty miserable for us. And then 5 minutes on a pose that we tend to like a little bit better. So it's a little bit easier for our bodies. That's a really winning formula for making big gains in flexibility over a short period of time. Inhale, 1, 2, 3, 4. Exhale, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Start to lift yourself up. Take your right hand to the outside of your right thigh. Bring the sole of your right foot flat on the floor so the right knee is up toward the stars. Bring your left hand up onto your left shoulders with the fingers facing back behind you, and then start pressing down into the sole of your right foot. Drop the back of your head back. Find a little bit of a wild thing. We're not going to stay here long. Again, this is just a reset. And then lower your seat down to the earth. And I'm just going to change. You keep your position. I'm going to change mine a bit just for demonstration purposes. So we're going to do a wide-legged forward fold. I would have the same props close by. So once again, I'm going to have my seat up on a bolster. This time, take the feet out nice and wide. And maybe the start is having the support of a chair under your forearms and hands as you start to fold forward. And then actually, before you get too far there, start to fold over this right thigh. Walk the hands off to the right. But again, the chair or the bolster could be here. You could stack 1 or 2 blocks up under the forehead as well. Start to lift yourself up. Walk your torso over to the other side. So kind of turn your torso so it's facing that left thigh. And then right away, walk your hands forward. Start to fold forward over that left thigh, maybe with it or without the support of blocks. So I'm going to need a little bit more height for me to get into this pose here. Come back to that 4-8 breath. The other thing that I find really tricky about hamstrings, like sprains, minor and even sometimes major tears, are pretty common injuries for active people. And they're really frustrating. They take forever to heal. And I think part of it is because we use them a lot. It's pretty hard for us to move our bodies at all without engaging the hamstrings. But with some time and some restraint, even pretty serious hamstring tears, my experiences will heal again. And sometimes the muscles deform. Like I have a big lump on the back of my right hamstring where I have a tear and the muscles all kind of bundled up and bunched together. But I have full strength and stability there. Start to lift yourself up. Ooh. And then slide your hands on the outside of your thighs. Maybe even bring them under your knees. Slide your heels in toward one another. And you can sit down onto your seat. Bring your hands under your shoulders, fingers pointing forward. Put a bend in your knees, soles of your feet on the earth. Start pressing down into your feet. Lift your thighs, lift your hips. Only if it's okay for your neck, drop the crown of your head back behind you. Now we're looking for a reverse tabletop shape here. In my body, it's really more like an M shape than a tabletop. That's okay. I'll tell you a little bit more about that. Release your chin to your chest, lower your seat down to the earth. And then press into your feet, lift your thighs, lift your hips, maybe drop the crown of your head back toward the earth. So I asked Lucas about that. My reverse tabletop is more like an M, but I feel like I have a strong core and upper body. What's the deal? Lower your seat, bring your chin to your chest. And he said, you do. You probably do. He said, the problem with most people is shoulder mobility. It's a big ask in most bodies. Go ahead and lift your seat back up one more time. Drop the crown of your head back behind you. He said, most bodies are going to have a really hard time making that kind of shape with the shoulders, but we get the same effect. So even that M shape is fine. Lower your seat down to the earth and grab 2 blocks in your chair. Set your chair close to the back edge of your mat. Grab your blocks. Press down into your seat. Lift your thighs, lift your hips. And then float your feet over your hips. So option 1 is waterfall. I'm actually going to slide that chair back a little bit. In option 2, if you lift your hips up, bring your hands to your lower back, and then lower your feet to your chair, right? A supported plow. Ooh, and actually I have my feet both on the wall and on the chair, and that's really nice. Right, so for me, doing this without support wouldn't feel good. I wouldn't choose to do it. But if you have some space, First of all, you could use the chair at a lower setting. You could turn it over on its side. You could stack your feet on bolsters or on blocks, or you could bring them all the way down to the earth. Now, do come back to that 4-8 breath, but notice it's really natural. The lungs are compressed here. It's going to be really difficult to draw a full and complete breath. If the plow pose is no good, that's what that waterfall's for. That's why we started right there. You can always go back there. If your feet come all the way down to the earth, you could straighten your arms, release them back behind you, and interlace your fingers. But if your feet don't come all the way down, you don't have full support under your feet, keep your hand right at your lower back, your hands. Maybe tweeze your elbows together behind you as well. And focus on that 4-8 breath. Inhaling for 1, 2, 3, 4. Exhale, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Inhale, 1, 2, 3, 4. Exhale, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, we're going to start to lower down from the plow. Be mindful of the blocks under the lower back. So maybe release the feet down first. And then roll off onto either side. Press yourself up onto your seat. Extend your legs long. Paschimottanasana. So I'm going to place a bolster under my thighs again. Option 1. Maybe a chair for your hands or your forearms to lean forward. But start folding forward over the thighs. If you have more space, come down onto blocks. This is going to be home for me tonight. I'm going to stay right here. But if you have even more space, you could lower your forehead down to one block, or maybe lower your heart and your forehead all the way down to your mat. So another factor about flexibility training that's really interesting to me, in that I really thought about this issue a lot. And this was one of many discussions that made me realize that I hadn't thought nearly as deeply on this topic as I thought. You know, if we wanted to have a conversation about nutrition for strength training, say lifting weights, right? No big surprises. That's a pretty common conversation. And people talk about protein shakes, chicken breasts, and egg whites, and things like that. Right? So it's not unusual for people interested in building muscle mass to talk about having a high protein intake. And if we talked about nutrition for cardio, right? Again, it's a pretty common conversation. It's pretty well known that like marathon runners will eat a big plate of pasta the night before they have a big event. I had a great big pasta feast the night before the Honolulu Marathon in 1992. It's a really common practice to carb load for the energy to get through a long endurance event. But we rarely talk about nutrition for flexibility. And what I'm learning that it really comes down to is moisture dense foods. So yes, we need to drink lots of hydrating fluids, high quality water and the like. But the other piece of it is two pieces actually, and the different sides of the same coin. One is eating moisture dense foods. So things like melons and fruits and leafy green vegetables and things like that. But the other piece of it is avoiding and really minimizing using drying foods with discretion. These would be things like breads and crackers and things that dry out the tissues. Right. It's possible after a little bit of time, you'll open up some space. So feel free whenever it serves you to start to descend deeper into this pose. Right. By the way, a little bend in the knees here is okay. With the back line of the body, the legs in particular, if the knees are locked out, then the fascial tissues from the heels up to the sits bones. They act as one continuous sheet. And it's really hard to affect changes in the shape of the fascia. But if we just put a bend in the knees, then the fascia starts to behave as two separate sheets. And it's much easier to start affecting changes in the shape of the fascia. So I talked about like distinguishing between muscle pain and joint pain. Muscle pain, again, is broadly. So if we're doing something that affects the knee and somebody notices pain in they're circling around the whole knee, that's probably fine. We're probably okay there. But if it's a single finger pointed to a joint, so this is giving me knee pain, that's where we need to back out. So the trick is with flexibility training, we want to stretch muscles, we want to stretch fascia, the connective tissue. But the other connective tissues, the joints, tendons, and ligaments, we want to stress them. We want to put them under an appropriate stress load. We do not want to stretch them. If we stretch them, it's one-way traffic. And once they're stretched, really our best option is to try to strengthen the stabilizing muscles. Start to lift yourself up out of the shape. Ooh, and we're going to go into a reset. To get onto the reset, just use good body mechanics, but come up onto your knees. Take 2 blocks, place them in between your heels. Bring your knees together. A little space between the knees is fine. Sit back on these blocks. Now, float your head over your shoulders, over your hips. If you've got still some space, reach back, remove a block, sit back onto one block. Right? And I'm home right here, but if you've got even more space, you can lift up, remove that block, and let your seat drop down toward the earth. But then interlace your hands behind your back, press the heels of your hands together, press your knuckles down toward the earth, lift your gaze up toward the stars. Then bring your chin to your chest, relax your arms for a second. We're going to do that heart opener one more time, just as a reset. All right, lift your chin, press the heels of your hands together, press your knuckles down toward the earth. And bring your chin to your chest, release your hands. Lift up, you can remove your block. And we're going to go into a downward facing dog. And I'd like you to have your chair and 2 blocks within reach. So press your index knuckles and thumbs down into the earth. Tuck your toes under your feet. Lift your hips up. Now from this dog, we're going to do a really short dog. So start to walk your hands forward toward the feet, a really short dog. And I'd like you to release your heels down toward the earth. So for some bodies, between the load on the back and getting the heels down toward the earth, we'll be better served with our hands or our forearms on a chair. Right, so this is one option. A second option, blocks under the hands at the medium or highest setting. So right now I'm looking between the heels of my hands and my feet. There might be 18 to 24 inches of space. Right, so this is a really, really short dog. And my heels are pressed into the earth. Right, so I don't have the kind of flexibility in my hamstrings and my low back that my heels are going to reach the earth from a down dog. So I'm going to have to place the hands on blocks. That's okay. Relax the crown of your head down toward the earth. Shift more weight into the heels. Right, so there's a load on the hands, there's a load on the shoulders, but most of the load is coming back onto the feet, especially into the heels. So it may not be possible to get this fully, but look for 60% to 70% of the weight in the feet, 30 to 40% of your body's weight in your hands. If you can, relax the neck. Remember our wet noodle principle. Muscles stretch best when they're relaxed. So there's definitely engagement that has to happen. Right? So the arms are engaged, the shoulders are engaged. But keep in mind, we're not working in particular in this shape on relaxing the shoulders, relaxing the arms. And the muscular engagement in the neck, it's not necessarily going to hinder what we're trying to do in the pose, but it's unnecessary use of energy. And maybe long term could cause some harm or some damage to your neck. 4-8 breath. 4 count inhale through your nose. And an 8 count exhale through your mouth. Then another 3 rounds of breath. Inhale 1, 2, 3, 4. Exhale 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Inhale 1, 2, 3, 4. Exhale 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Inhale 1, 2, 3, 4. Exhale 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Great job. Lower your knees down to the earth. Come onto your seat. And we're just going to do a reset. So lengthen your right leg long. Put a bend in your left knee. Place the sole of your left foot on the earth. Then step it over your right knee. Place your left hand under your left shoulder. It may be angled out a little bit. Now you could catch that left knee with the right hand, the outside of the left knee. You could catch the outside of the left knee in your right inner elbow crease, or hook that right elbow on the outside of the left thigh and start rotating your heart to the left as you twist your hips back to the right. And then start, come back to center, come out of the twist. Release your left foot and then lengthen that left leg long. Slide your right heel back towards your groin. Step your right foot over your left. Right hand under your right shoulder, just like the other side. Options are left hand, left inner elbow crease, or left elbow. Rotate your heart to the right, your hips back to the left. And then come back to center, release your twist. Use good body mechanics. Transition your way onto your back. Grab 2 blocks and a strap. Put a bend in your knees, place the soles of your feet on the earth. When I ask you to press into your feet and lift your hips, press both blocks at the lowest height under your low back. And then take that strap, put a loop in the strap, And then loop the strap around the ball of your right foot. And have the buckle where you can manipulate and change the length. What I'd like you to do, I like that right leg locked out. Now, I know we don't often say this in yoga, but I'm saying it here. Lock the right leg out. Now, that heel, if you look at my body, the heel is well below my seat in regards to the rest of my body, right? No problem. Straight arms are strong arms. So take the slack out of the strap until you have the weight balance between one side of the foot or the other in a long, straight arm. Right? You could also do this without the blocks under the lower back. There are some bodies for whom they're going to get back pain, and this is not going to get comfortable without the blocks under the low back. So I start here, but you could choose to do something else here too. Start maybe pulling the toes on that right foot forward. If you're anywhere, anything less than a 7, anything less than a 7, start drawing the toes in the gentle direction as if you were pointing them up past the crown of the head. And start to tee your left arm out to the side. Use the strap and lower the pinky edge blade of your right foot off to the right. Straight leg the whole time. And you may have to straighten that left leg long in order to stabilize and hold this as well. And same thing, we're looking for sensation. We're looking on a 7 on a scale from 0 to 10. So that may involve either you shortening the strap or drawing the toes higher up toward the crown of your head. Come back to your 4-8 breath. We'll stay here for 2 more rounds of breath. Inhale for 1, 2, 3, 4. Exhale 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Inhale 1, 2, 3, 4. Exhale 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Then start lifting the sole of your left foot back up parallel to the ceiling. Transfer the strap to your left hand. Tee your right arm out to the side. And then start drawing your left heel across the center, your right heel rather, across the center line of your body. Right, so leg is straight, arm is straight. Right leg, left arm, both straight. So you may need to shorten the strap up a little bit for that. Right, so you may still be feeling this in the hamstring. I'm getting a lot in the hamstring, but I'm also getting a lot in the deep 6 lateral hip rotators on the outside of my right hip, like in the area of the right butt cheek. Ooh. Come back to the 4-8 breath. I'm getting a nice twist in my lower back too, but it may be a little different in your body. That's 100% okay. No worries there. 2 more rounds of breath. Inhale. Exhale. Inhale. Exhale. Then start drawing the sole of your right foot back parallel to the ceiling. Here you can start to put a bend in your right knee, maybe even just fish the left foot into the strap. Strap is already in your left hand. I'm going to need to adjust my blocks a little bit. Adjust the length of the strap as needed. Straight arms to strong arms. Nice straight left leg as well. And draw the toes toward the crown of the head. Press through the heel until you get to that sensation level of 7. So I didn't cue it until we got to the second part of the pose on the other side. But if you like to straighten that right leg long now, if I do that, I really feel a stretch in the right hip flexors as well. The hip AD adductors. Notice and check in if you're gripping anywhere where you don't need to. See if you can let it go. And come back to that 4-8 down regulating breath. One more round of breath. And then tee your right arm out to the side. Start lowering the pinky edge blade of your left foot off to the left. Straight left leg, straight left arm. Wet noodle everywhere. One more round of breath. Inhale. Exhale. And start to sweep the sole of your left foot back up parallel to the ceiling. Change the strap to your right hand. Right away, I'm going to tighten the strap down. I know I'm going to need a little bit more tension in the strap. Key your left arm out to the side. Drop the big toe edge blade of your left foot off the right hand side of your mat. Right, and there's a tendency for that leg, when it goes over onto the other side, to bend a little bit. See if you can straighten it out again. It doesn't have to be locked out. but very straight. But one of the nice things about flexibility training, it's a difficult discipline. It really challenges us because we're in stillness and we're in discomfort. But one of the nice things, in contrast with strength training, where if we start lifting weights, we tend to make gains very, very quickly. We notice the gains really quickly. But then if something in life comes up and it stops us, we can't, or we don't, for whatever reason, strength training, we have losses really, really quickly. So losses in strength, losses in endurance, but also strength is loss in muscle tissue, right? So the muscle atrophies. Whereas flexibility training, although the gains will be significant if we use an appropriate technique like we talked about tonight. But if we go through seasons where we can't, the gains that we've made, slower though they may be to come, are very long lasting. So this is a practice that really has some staying power for us. Switch the sole of your left foot back parallel to the ceiling. Oof. Put a bend in your left knee. Lower down to your mat and find any final resting shape on your seat, your belly, your back, or your side, as long as you can fully and completely relax. And you could come back to a comfortable natural breath, that's fine. That 4-8 breath, if you wanted to keep that up, that might transition you into bedtime really nicely as well. Start to lengthen and extend your breath. And then maybe choose to reanimate your body with other small movements. Maybe wiggle your fingers, wiggle your toes, maybe draw your chin from shoulder to shoulder. Larger movements too, if they would feel good, those are really appropriate now. You could rotate your hands at the wrist, your feet at the ankles. You could choose to take a full body stretch. And then draw your knees, hug your knees into your chest. Give yourself a nice squeeze. And then roll off onto either side. Press yourself up into a seated position with your legs crossed. Place your right hand on your belly, your left hand on your heart. And if this feels appropriate for you, repeat these words after me, either silently or out loud. May this practice strengthen my body, my mind, and my spirit. May this practice strengthen my body, my mind, and my spirit. Beautiful work today, friend. And that concludes our practice for today. And that was the Science of Stretching Hamstring Freedom sequence.